I want to welcome everybody to the fourth annual Parsons Field Institute Symposium. We do this virtually every year, and it's a great way to bring in the entire community that surrounds the Parsons Field Institute, update everybody, celebrate our accomplishments, do kind of a deep dive into some of the topics that have been really pertinent during that year, and also give everyone a look at the year ahead. So glad you all are here. All right, a couple of little housekeeping things. Please mute yourself during the presentations. This helps so that we don't have like dogs barking in the background or doorbells ringing, that sort of thing. Presentations in each section are going to be followed by a Q&A. And what I mean by section is if you look at the agenda, some of the presentations are collected under one topic. So we might have 2 or 3 presentations and then kind of a Q&A section for all of them. And we did that for the sake of efficiency. Please feel free to write down your questions as a presentation is going, or put them right in the chat, and that'll help our moderator collect the questions and then share them when we get to that Q&A section. Let's see. So stick around for a prize after the break. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to stick around and find out, but it's a pretty cool thing that we launched this year. And all presentations are going to be recorded and made available. So if you have to leave at any point and you're missing that one presentation that you were really hoping to get, that's okay. It'll be sent out afterwards as a YouTube link. So with that, a real quick review of the goal of the Parsons Field Institute. We conduct ecological research through partnerships and citizen science to inform long-term natural resource management of the Sonoran Desert, to contribute to the broader scientific knowledge, and to inspire stewardship of the desert. And you're going to see all of those things today. Real quick look at our agenda. After me, you'll hear from Doug Jensen, the Citizen Science Chair, on the unique role of citizen science in our organization. And then we'll be jumping right into heat and fire with some presentations about the flora and fauna and fire in the Sonoran Desert. We'll do a 5-minute break and then the door prize. So you got to come back for it. And then we're going to go into restoring for a hotter and drier future, because a lot of what we are going to be doing in the coming year centers around restoration. Last, we have a panel of stewards that work in or have leadership positions in the various programs, the various conservancy programs, and they're going to be talking about what they do to help deal with extreme heat and fire in the context of the preserve. So really looking forward to that. And then we're going to end with a look at the road ahead. So I always like to start with the big why, because that kind of sets everything in context. So people know, like, okay, why are we asking these particular questions, or why are we doing things, the way that we are? And also kind of gives us a little bit of historical context. Some of the big questions that we have dealt with over the last 10 plus years of the Parsons Field Institute are what lives in the preserve. Those were the first questions that we addressed, just lists of flora and fauna, who's here. Then we wanted to know what's the baseline, like what can we expect, or what are we maybe managing to? And then what are the threats to the preserved flora and fauna, or even geology at times, or just the ecological integrity of the preserve? We definitely need to know that. And then from there, the ecological monitoring that we do helps give us a sense of the trends. Are sensitive species decreasing? Is that something we need to pay attention to? Are invasive species increasing? Those kind of trends tell us, what we might need to recommend. what we might need to work with our partners to accomplish to make sure that the preserve stays healthy. And that leads us to what can we do about it? Whoops. So you might have seen this last year. Jesse put together a really nice kind of flow of, how the adaptive management works in this context, why these questions are important, and where our projects kind of fit in this context. So if you remember, our monitoring projects, like the bat monitoring, the bird monitoring, butterfly monitoring, those all give us information about trends, and we periodically review them, and through getting results, and make decisions about, like, do we need to recommend a management action, or do we need to gather more information, or do we need to keep monitoring, etc. And each one of our projects is in a slightly different area on this chart. So as we're going through them, just keep this in mind in terms of, like, some of our projects are very experimental. Some of them are, we do the same thing every year and get information until we notice a weird trend, and then we go in and investigate. So that's sort of how the model works. Really, really brief history of the Parsons Field Institute in citizen science. And this is for some of the folks that we've invited to this symposium who may not be as familiar. The Parsons Field Institute is, well, actually about 14 years old, 13, 14 years, depending on the point you start with. But the idea of it started back in 2005 when the preserve was being built out very rapidly, and people started asking questions like, hey, what happens when we get, when the city is able to purchase all of the land that that we want, or a huge amount of it? How do we take care of it long term? And that was sort of, focused on like an ecotourism/science model. But in 2010, we were able to get a grant from the Pulliam Foundation to really launch the Field Institute as a science and citizen science model. I could talk forever about this, but I'm going to go through it really briefly. In 2013, we launched our citizen science program. We'd been kind of a loose collection of, staff and volunteers and research PIs or research partners. And in 2013, we really put that all together, and the citizen science program was born. In 2014, we came out with the flora and fauna survey that kind of solidified, this is what we have in the preserve. And then in 2015, we worked with the city of Scottsdale and other partners to develop the ecological resource plan, which is similar to a management plan, not quite, but very similar to that. In 2018, the Bob and Renee Parsons Foundation joined, and the Field Institute became the Parsons Field Institute. And then in 2020, we continued to do a lot of work despite COVID, because we do a lot of our work outside. So that was great, but we also put some new tools in our tool belt, such as Zoom symposia. In 2023, we launched our first complete hybrid science and education project through our living labs, and you're going to hear a lot about that today. So you can see, the trajectory of growth and intricacy of the Field Institute. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it would not be possible without our citizen scientists. As you're going to hear from Doug, that is a really unique aspect of us, of what we do, and this just would not be possible without them. All right, so I'm showing you some of our foundational accomplishments, and also being mindful of the time. These are some of the papers that we came out with, or plans that we came out with early on, that really set the stage for what we do. And especially the ecological resource plan, that really set aside like, okay, these are our sensitive species, tortoises, Townsend's big ear bat. These are the things, these are the threats, these are the things we really have to keep an eye on, invasive species, fire, things like that. So we're standing on a really good foundation of research and understanding of this place. Over the course of this year, and I have a feeling I am probably not going to get to everything, but we've really made advancements in a number of key areas. And I'm just going to go through them real fast. So our wildlife camera project launched a spring deployment of 60 cameras. This is probably one of the biggest camera projects in the state, maybe more. But it's very impressive, and we got that off the ground this year. We fully identified the photos from our fall deployment of 30 cameras. So we do 30 in the fall, 60 in the spring, and those have been identified by about 45 experienced volunteers. That's quite the army. We have the first descriptive analysis of the fall camera data and collected sound profiles from 30 of the fall cameras, or the 30 fall cameras. Over on the left, you see some of our preliminary results. That is a species diversity map, and the larger dots mean they indicate greater diversity. So we're starting to see, what's going on in the preserve with our species diversity. With the tortoise telemetry, we completed 3 years of data collection, presented preliminary results to the Arizona Game and Fish Department, secured support for continuing the survey, worked with partners to create educational signage, and worked with the news media to educate the public. So a lot of wonderful activity, a couple of tragedies, but those with a couple of tortoises that died, but we were able to really kind of springboard that to more public education. Invasive species, these numbers blew me away when I first saw them, because we have got our maps to a point where now we were able to run a full analysis on what we've accomplished. Since 2017, our invasive species team have mapped 22,978 acres of the preserve. And that's for the most part on foot with a pair of binoculars. That's impressive. We've got a little over 30,000 acres to work with, so that's a large amount. They identified 3,497 acres of fountain grass and buffalo grass, our two key species. So that's about 15% of the land surveyed. They've removed 2,739 acres. That's a lot. That is a lot. And that's 78% of the known population. And my takeaway is just hope. I think that we have a lot to look forward to in terms of actually getting these two species under control. Continued to work with the city of Scottsdale to expand the joint invasive species plan to include stinknet. And we're continuing our work with Intel to test a scale up of the AI software. And we're hoping that our work together will result in a model where they can take photographs, aerial photographs, run them through the AI software and identify fountain grass and buffalo grass. So we can finally get those last 7,000 acres surveyed without working through any more boots. Our arthropods, our longest running survey, got some really interesting results from the first analysis. Here's a poster. I know that you can't read it, but when these become available, you can certainly, zoom in, and we have the poster available as well. This showed no consistent effects just to back up a little bit, we had transects where we look at the arthropods at the edge of the preserve and then in the interior of the preserve. And after, this time of doing that survey, we found that there really weren't consistent differences. So we're not really showing a big edge effect. But when you break it down to seasons and locations, you do see some differences. One of them was in the summer, we see a big increase of invasive fire ants along the wildland urban interface or the edge. So that's interesting. This also, the analysis supports the hypothesis that climate is a strong driver of arthropods. So that's something that we, suspected, but it's really good to see confirmed. And more about the arthropods in the last presentation. We also came out with a butterfly paper, and that showed that we have some key declines region-wide in butterfly populations, which are very important to look at. I'm going to skip that one and go straight to what we did this year with restoration. So many of you know that we had the diamond fire that burned about 270 acres of the preserve in the Gooseneck area. And we shifted one of our projects, the Living Labs, which was a kind of high school restoration project, to the burned area in order to shift those resources over, because we were doing a lot of planting. And we also continued working with the students on their experiment at their school. The students actually wrote a paper and got it published in the Cactus and Succulent Journal, Society Journal, which is amazing. There's a copy of the paper right there. We can send all these out to anyone interested afterwards. And we, together with construction and maintenance, and of course the citizen science program and the Living Labs, planted 120 baby saguaros and 28 Palo Verde trees in the burned area. So it's a really good start. And if you're wondering, that is no small feat. But wait, if you were wondering where bats, phenology, birds, and our IUCN project or any others in there, I have to say we had to really whittle it down to the projects to highlight in this beginning section, but I'm going to be talking about all of these in the last section when we go over future directions. So hang in there.